One of the most symbolic events of the Civil War occurred in a mansion. The event was the reception held on January 1st, 1863, at the Medford, Massachusetts estate of the businessman George L. Stearns to celebrate the Emancipation Proclamation, which had been issued that afternoon by President Lincoln. Stearns called the affair the John Brown Party. The highlight of the evening was the unveiling of a marble bust of John Brown, the anti-slavery martyr who had died on a scaffold 3 years earlier after his doomed heroic effort to free the slaves by leading a 22-man raid on Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Brown's presence was felt elsewhere in America that day. The Union General Robert H. Milroy, stationed near Harper's Ferry, read Lincoln's proclamation aloud to his regiment, which spontaneously thundered forth the war song John Brown's Body, with its heady chorus about Brown moldering in the grave, while his soul keeps marching on. The Emancipation Proclamation made General Milroy feel as though John Brown's spirit had merged with his. That handbill order, he said, gave freedom to the slaves through and around the region where old John Brown was hung. I felt then that I was on duty in the most righteous cause that man ever drew sword in. In Boston, a tense wait had ended in mid-afternoon when the news came over the wires that the proclamation had been put into effect. At a Jubilee concert in the music hall, Ralph Waldo Emerson read his abolitionist poem, Boston Hymn, and was followed by performances of Handel's Hallelujah Chorus, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and Mendelssohn's Hymn of Praise. That evening at Tremont Temple, a huge crowd cheered as the proclamation was read aloud and exploded into song when Frederick Douglass led in singing "Blow Ye the Trumpet, Blow," the joyous hymn that had been Brown's favorite and had been sung at his funeral. A number of people missed the Boston celebration because they had gone to George Stearns's 26-acre estate in nearby Medford for the John Brown Party. The party was, in its own way, as meaningful as Lincoln's proclamation. It celebrated the man who had sparked the war that led to this historic day. Lincoln's proclamation, freeing millions of enslaved blacks, sped the process that led eventually to civil rights. John Brown's personal war against slavery had been a main catalyst of this process. Gathered in Stearns's elegant home was a motley group. Stearns himself, long-bearded and earnest, had made a fortune manufacturing lead pipes. His guests included the bald, spectacled William Lloyd Garrison and the volatile Wendell Phillips, pioneers of abolitionism, the stately reserved philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, magus of transcendentalism, his idealistic cohort Amos Bronson Alcott, who was there with his daughter Louisa May, soon to captivate young readers with Little Women, Franklin Sanborn, the Concord schoolteacher whose students included children of Emerson, John Brown, and Henry James Sr., and the red-haired, vivacious Julia Ward Howe, writer of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. They represented cultural threads that had once been aimed in various directions, but were now unified in their devotion to the memory of John Brown. Garrison and Phillips had since the 1830s called for immediate emancipation of the slaves, or, barring that, separation of the North and the South. Garrison, long committed to pacifism, had advocated moral argument as the sole means of fighting slavery, until John Brown's self-sacrificing battles inspired him to espouse a more militant stance. Phillips, long driven by his disgust with slavery to curse the Constitution and the American Union, had come to espouse Brown's vision of a unified nation based on rights for people of all ethnicities. Emerson had begun his career alienated from the anti-slavery cause, but had taken it up with growing zeal that culminated in his famous statement that John Brown would make the gallows as glorious as the cross. Along with Thoreau, who had died the previous year, he had been chiefly responsible for rescuing Brown from infamy and oblivion. Alcott, too, had played a part in the resuscitation of Brown, whom he called the type and synonym of the just.